and Qingyu frowned and asked in return, "Who are you?" "Tisuke, I was the one who asked the question first. Can you answer me first?" The young man shrugged. "Do you know Lin Chia? Which one is Bailey Pang Pang?" Upon hearing the name Bailey Pang Pang, the confusion in Qingyu's eyes deepened. I am Bailey Pang Pang." Bailey Pang Pang raised his hand. Seeing this, the young man nodded slightly. "Then that's correct. Let me introduce myself. My name is Li Neza. You should have heard of my name." At this statement, the four of them froze in place. After a moment, their eyes widened slightly. "Neza." Shin Qingzhu carefully examined the young man in the bright red hoodie, who only reached her shoulder and couldn't connect him to the legendary third prince who caused a ruckus in the East Sea. "Don't look at me like that. I'm not some ancient monster. After reincarnation, I naturally blend into modern society," Neza said, shaking the latest model smartphone in his hand. "Sorry, I need to confirm your identities before I introduce myself. Otherwise, people might think I'm crazy." "And Qingyu, you came to find us for something?" he asked. After all, Neza was a well-known figure in the mythology of the Great Xia. How could he suddenly appear and say he wanted to find them? Moreover, from his situation at the airport, it seemed he had been waiting there for a long time. They were just a group of mortals. What qualifications did they have to attract the attention of a deity from the Great Xia? Neza stuffed his phone back into his pocket and said seriously, "I'm here to take you back to the Heavenly Court." "Heavenly Court?" "Yeah." Neza nodded. "There are people who want to see you. Driver, take us to Letten Mountain." Neza raised his hand to hail a taxi and naturally sat in the passenger seat, fastening his seatbelt. Outside the taxi, Qingyu and the others exchanged glances. "What are you standing there for? Get in." Neza poked his head out of the window, his expression strange. "You guys haven't even taken a taxi before, have you? Is your family that poor?" Bailey Pong Pong's mouth twitched slightly as he glanced at Qingyu, who nodded helplessly. The three of them placed Jiang Er's coffin in the trunk, opened the door and sat in the back seat. As the vehicle slowly started moving, Qingyu finally couldn't help but ask, Li Neza, are you sure taking a taxi will get us to that place?" Qingyu initially wanted to call Neza directly, but hesitated because the driver was sitting right next to him, so he changed the name. Neza rolled his eyes at Qingyu through the rearview mirror. "That place is a bit far from the city. It's not convenient to go directly. You know how it is with too many people around, right?" "Understood." Neza glanced at the time, yawned and boredly took out his phone to start scrolling through short videos. Watching Neza skillfully swipe the screen, Shin Qingzhu's expression grew increasingly strange. He gently nudged Qingyu and Bailey Pang Pang, exchanging glances. "Shin Qingzhu, is this guy really Neza? Could he be a fake?" "Qingyu, he can say the words reincarnation and rebirth. He doesn't seem fake." "Shin Qingzhu, but he looks just like a modern person. Smartphone, headphones, taking a taxi, short videos. He even follows Sanjiu Inu. Isn't that a dead account that only posts character designs?" Bailey Pang Pang. A deity from the Great Xia reincarnated for 100 years. It's not surprising that he has adapted to modern technology. Who knows, maybe there are Great Xia deities cruising around in stretched Lincolns all day. Who can say for sure? About an hour later, the taxi left the urban area and finally stopped in a desolate countryside. "How much?" Neza closed the short video and opened the payment code. 276. "So expensive. From the city to the suburbs, it's that expensive. I'm using the meter." Neza silently looked at the 215 yuan left in his change, then turned to the three behind him with a somewhat complicated expression. "Do any of you have money?" Qingyu and Shin Qingzhu simultaneously looked at Bailey Pang Pang. Bailey Pang Pang pondered for a moment. "Driver, do you accept checks?" "Checks? Are you kidding me? Do you guys even have money?" "Not accepted." "Then, driver, which group does this car belong to?" "Driver?" 2 minutes later. Seeing the driver abandon the car and joyfully sprint toward the city, Qingyu asked in astonishment, "You let him buy this car?" "No, buying a car is too troublesome." Bailey Pang Pang shrugged. "I bought their group and had someone give this driver a new car. Now this car is ours." Neza stood beside the taxi, dumbfounded. "Let's go, Neza." Bailey Pang Pang patted his shoulder. "Which direction is the Heavenly Court?" Neza stared at him strangely for a moment, then turned and walked into the wilderness, lightly leaping as two wheels of fire formed beneath his feet. "Follow me." He transformed into a streak of red light, quickly soaring into the sky, with Bailey Pang Pang and the others following closely behind. As they ascended into the clouds, a magnificent stone gate hundreds of meters high appeared out of nowhere beneath the azure sky. Above the gate, two gilded characters were deeply engraved. "South Heaven. This is the legendary South Heaven Gate?" Enchinyu asked in surprise. "Where is the heavenly court?" "You'll know once you go in," Neza replied. The four of them landed in front of the South Heaven Gate. As they passed through the grand stone gate, Enchinyu felt a flash before his eyes, and his feet landed on a white jade stone path. Looking around, Enchinyu saw sunlight illuminating the surroundings, with the walls of the grand formation in the sky reflecting faint rainbow colors. Ethereal energy filled every inch of space, and celestial birds flew overhead, their clear and melodious cries echoing in their ears. Before them were celestial palaces, ancient halls, spiritual pools, and winding bridges that stretched endlessly. Following the white jade stone path ahead, they could see several magnificent halls shimmering with golden light standing tall at the peak of the clouds. As Enchinyu and the others beheld the scene before them, their minds were momentarily dazed. These celestial palaces and temples, which should only exist in mythological stories, appeared right before them as if they were in a dream. For them, who were stepping into the heavenly court for the first time, it was a dual shock to both their vision and psyche. "Where is the person who wants to see us?" Enchinyu withdrew his gaze and turned to ask. "Over there." Neza pointed toward the peak of the clouds, where the several magnificent halls shimmered with golden light. Looking at the magnificent palaces in the distance, Enchinyu's heart skipped a beat. Which great gods of the Great Xia resided in those palaces? Was Chao Yuan also there? The four of them transformed into four streaks of light, flying through the vast heavenly court directly towards the palaces atop the clouds. The howling wind brushed past Enchinyu's ears as he looked down at the other celestial palaces below. He noticed that there were not many Great Xia gods active in the expansive heavenly court. Even the few who were riding clouds to and fro bore injuries, and almost all were heading towards a grand celestial palace in the distance. "What happened?" Enchinyu asked in confusion. Neza glanced down and replied, "The heavenly court is in direct conflict with the Sun City. Although the Sun City has been completely destroyed, our Great Xia gods have suffered heavy losses. Most of the deities are currently in their own caves, meditating and healing. Some with more severe injuries have gone to the Duoshui Palace to seek medicine." Enchinyu nodded thoughtfully. Neza led them to a grand palace on the left side of the cloud peak, and Enchinyu looked up to see the three large characters UNG Palace hanging high above. "You may enter," Neza said, standing outside the palace. Enchinyu responded with an and stepped inside with the others. Inside the spacious palace, only the sound of their footsteps echoed. Wisps of fireflies danced at the ceiling, illuminating the entire hall. As Enchinyu moved forward, he observed his surroundings. Aside from the towering vermilion pillars supporting the ceiling, there was nothing else. "Why is there no one here?" Jiang Air floated in the air, looking around in confusion. "I don't know. This palace seems quite deep. Let's go further in," Enchinyu said, his expression unchanged. "Where did Fatty go?" Shin Qingzhu, who had been lagging behind, suddenly spoke up. Enchinyu and Jiang Air were taken aback, turning to look. They realized that Bai Li Fatty had vanished without a trace. "He seemed to be right behind us when we entered. How did he suddenly disappear?" Jiang Air recalled, frowning slightly. At that moment, a voice echoed from the front of the palace. "Young friends, you have finally arrived." The three turned their attention forward to see an elderly man in a white robe, exuding an ethereal aura, walking towards them with a whisk in hand. Upon seeing this old man, Enchinyu exchanged glances with the others and bowed. "May I ask who you are?" "I am the old man of the Silver Star," the elder replied with a smile, clasping his hands. "The old man of the Silver Star?" A hint of confusion flashed through Enchinyu's mind. As one of the 5 Star Lords of the Heavenly Court, they had certainly heard of his name, but they had never interacted with him before. Why had he brought them here? "So it is the Star Lord," Enchinyu said politely. "May I ask why the Star Lord has summoned us?" Hee, dear young friends, please follow me, the old man of the silver star said with a mysterious smile, lightly waving his whisk as he led the three deeper into the palace. And Qingyu and the others quickly followed. As they ventured further in, a blue light rippled from the depths of the palace. It was a sphere of water glowing with a faint blue light, about 100 meters wide, quietly suspended just below the ceiling, resembling a blue star slowly rotating. The closer they got to this blue water sphere, the denser the spiritual energy in the air became. When they reached its vicinity, a faint mist of spiritual energy was already floating around. And Qingyu stopped beneath the water sphere, peering curiously through the mist. The moment he saw what was inside the water sphere, his pupils suddenly constricted. In the center of the faint blue water sphere floated a figure with tightly closed eyes, black hair drifting in the water, pale skin devoid of any color, with no heartbeat or breath, resembling a corpse. It was Lin Jie. Not only in Qingyu, but Xin Qingzhu and Jiang Er beside him also noticed Lin Jie in the water sphere, their expressions changing drastically. Jie! Xin Qingzhu exclaimed in shock. When they were on the Pamir Plateau, Xin Qingzhu had stood atop a peak, witnessing Lin Jie's battle and death alongside other new recruits. He knew that Lin Jie's body had ultimately been retrieved by the Heavenly Court, but he never expected to see him here. Star-Lord, what has happened to him? And Qingyu, sensing something, looked at the old man of the silver star with hopeful eyes. There's no need to worry, young friends. Although Lin Jie has lost his heartbeat and breath, he is not completely dead. There is still a trace of life remaining within him, the old man of the silver star said slowly. This is thanks to that white-haired mortal who can manipulate time. At the moment Lin Jie was on the brink of death, he exerted all his strength to freeze the time within Lin Jie's body. After the Heavenly Court returned, Yang Erlang carried his body and rushed into the Yushu Palace, bowing to ask the primordial Heavenly Venerable for help. Later, the primordial Heavenly Venerable personally took charge and retrieved this pure Yuan life spring from the supreme treasure left by the spirit treasure Heavenly Venerable, preserving Lin Jie's life. Upon hearing this, the eyes of Qingyu and the others brightened rapidly. Lin Jie was still alive. Lin Jie had always been the backbone of this team. His death had cast a shadow over the entire group, and now learning that he was still alive filled them with immense joy, dispelling the pessimistic emotions that had been weighing them down. When will he wake up? Xin Qingzhu couldn't help but ask. The old man of the silver star shook his head. The pure Yuan life spring can only preserve his life, holding on to the last breath of qi within him. Cannot heal him. His potential soul and life have all been completely exhausted. Generally speaking, there is no possibility of recovery. The best state is merely to continue existing in the life spring. As soon as he leaves this life spring, the last trace of his vitality will dissipate, and it will truly be impossible to save him. The expressions of the three turned grim again. Even the Heavenly Venerable cannot do anything? Human power has its limits and each field has its expertise. The three Heavenly Venerables are not omnipotent, the old man of the silver star said helplessly. And Qingyu pondered for a moment before speaking again. Star-Lord, aside from informing us about Lin Jie's condition, is there anything else you summoned us for? Logically speaking, Lin Jie being saved by the Heavenly Court was indeed a significant matter. But for these great Xia gods, it seemed unnecessary to specifically bring them, mere mortals, to the Heavenly Court to explain it in person. At most they could have simply conveyed the message through Zhuqing that Lin Jie was not dead. After all, even the commander of the Night Watch, Zhuqing, had never personally ascended to the Heavenly Court. Why did the great Xia gods invite them to the upper realm? Heavenly Court. Next to the Yuanji Hall. Bailey Pangpang stepped over the threshold of the Qinji Hall and saw the Taoist inside smiling silently, letting out a helpless sigh. When did you wake up? The Yuanshi Tianzun in the hall asked with a light laugh. When you all repaired the source of the Heavenly Court. Bailey Pangpang shrugged. At that time I was sitting on that mat in the high heaven plane. When you fixed the source of the Heavenly Court, my memories returned ahead of time along with the reincarnation of the other gods of the Great Xia. What about your cultivation? Not returned. That makes sense. Yuanshi Tianzun nodded. You had already self-destructed your Tao body before that great calamity arrived, not entering the six paths, but entering the true self reincarnation. Before the true self reincarnation reaches perfection, You probably won't be able to attain Tao fruit again. Bailey Pang Pang naturally walked in front of the Taoist, picked up a cup of tea from the table and took a gentle sip. So, you had someone bring them to the heavenly court just to find an excuse to see me? Yes and no. Yuan Shi Tianzun spoke leisurely. After all, Lin Chia and the Black King are in the heavenly court. Bringing them up can also help control the Black King's emotions and prevent another rampage. Moreover, among them there is a seed of disaster. A seed of disaster? Before the High Heaven Plane incident, a time god from the future human world came to see me. After telling me about the situation in the High Heaven Plane, he specifically reminded me. Yuan Shi Tianzun paused and continued, among you, there is someone who will become a nightmare for the entire world, and one of his purposes for returning is to eliminate that person in advance. Bailey Pang Pang frowned slightly. Who? Yuan Shi Tianzun gazed into his eyes and slowly spoke a name. Bailey Pang Pang fell into silence. It can't be. After a moment, Bailey Pang Pang shook his head. It's impossible. Is it really impossible? Yuan Shi Tianzun said lightly. If you truly believe that, why are you hesitating? Bailey Pang Pang was left speechless. You've already seen it, haven't you? You've already seen that there is something unusual about that person. You called them up here to take the opportunity to eliminate him? Bailey Pang Pang put down the cup and frowned, interrupting Yuan Shi Tianzun's words. No, Yuan Shi Tianzun shook his head. The future is not set in stone. We have already changed the timeline by destroying the High Heaven Plane in advance. This time he might not even take that path. But concerning the lives of all beings, to be on the safe side, we still need to observe his temperament. Hearing this, Bailey Pang Pang fell silent for a moment and sighed deeply. I understand. The two talked for a long time in the hall. Bailey Pang Pang looked through the hall door at the sky outside. It's about time. If I don't go back now, they will start to worry about me. Bailey Pang Pang turned around, waved at Yuan Shi Tianzun and walked straight out of the hall. Just as he was about to step out of the hall, a voice suddenly came from behind. Spirit treasure. Bailey Pong Pong's footsteps halted in midair. Come back. Yuan Shi Tianzun stood in the hall watching his back. The current Great Xia needs the spirit treasure Tianzun. In the empty hall, Bailey Pang Pang turned back to glance at him. Shook his head. The true self-reincarnation is not yet complete. Right now I am not the spirit treasure Tianzun of the Great Xia. I am just Bailey Pang Pang of the Nightfall team. When the day of complete reincarnation arrives, I will return. As his voice fell, Bailey Pang Pang stepped out of the Qinji Hall and disappeared from Yuan Shi Tianzun's sight. In the silent hall, Yuan Shi Tianzun silently gazed at the empty hall door. After a long time he let out a helpless sigh. At that moment, as if sensing something, he narrowed his eyes and turned to look in a certain direction of the heavenly court. Is it him? Yuanji Hall. After listening to Qingyu's question, Tai Bai Jingxing's eyes flashed with a hint of embarrassment, then he smiled kindly. The reason I called you here is certainly not just to meet Lin Xiaoyu. Please follow me. Tai Bai Jingxing led the three of them directly out of the Yuanji Hall. Just as they stepped out the door, they saw a fat man sitting lazily on the stone steps in front of the hall, stretching. Pang Pang? Where did you just go? Shin Qingyu asked. I was going to ask you where you went. Bailey Pang Pang widened his eyes. I just went to the restroom before entering the hall, and when I came back you were all gone. I didn't dare to wander around the hall alone, so I had to wait for you here. Shin Qingyu silently rolled her eyes. And Qingyu briefly explained the situation inside the hall to Bailey Pang Pang, then followed Tai Bai Jingxing, flying straight toward a celestial palace below the cloud peak. Ding! Ding! As they flew halfway, two melodious bell chimes came from deep within the heavenly court. And Qingyu was taken aback and turned to look in the direction of the sound, asking in confusion, Star-Lord, what is that bell sound? That is the Qiming bell. Tai Bai Jingxing seemed a bit surprised as well. One bell signifies that the Tianzun is about to set up a platform to discuss the Tao. Two bells signify that guests are coming to visit the heavenly court. Three bells signify that a great calamity is approaching the mortal realm. Strange, who would come to visit the heavenly court at this time? Just as the group was puzzled, a Taoist figure, accompanied by a being enveloped in golden light and bearing 6 pure white wings, flew directly toward the Yuanji Hall from above the heavenly court. Upon seeing that golden figure, Bailey Peng Peng's eyes narrowed slightly. That is. We've arrived. In front of the UNG hall, Yuan Shi Tianzun spoke light or faint. He is inside. The golden figure looked up at the plaque in front of the hall, and with a flap of the 6 wings behind, it instantly flashed past the hall and arrived before the Pure Yuan Life Spring. Its gaze fell upon Lin Chia, who was floating in the spring, and its eyes narrowed slightly. Yuan Shi Tianzun stepped out from the void and stood beside it, smiling helplessly. The condition of his body theoretically has no chance of survival. But this shouldn't be a difficult task for you. The golden figure spoke calmly. He just needs a miracle. Then it's up to you. Yuan Shi Tianzun turned and walked toward the hall's exit. Regarding the transaction you just proposed, once you save him we can move elsewhere to discuss it in detail. Yuan Shi Tianzun's figure flickered and disappeared from the spot. In the empty hall, the 6 pure white wings behind the golden figure slowly spread open, like a giant white fan, enveloping the Pure Yuan Life Spring and Lin Chia within. A golden domain rapidly expanded, and the sacred and brilliant golden light flowed like flames in the mortal realm, instantly filling the entire hall. Awaken. Endless darkness enveloped Lin Chia like the currents of the deep sea, slowly wrapping around him as his body sank deeper. His hollow eyes stared into the void before him, resembling a soulless doll, powerless against the engulfing darkness, merely sinking deeper and deeper with the currents around him. Whenever he felt he had fallen into the abyss of darkness, a force would always pull him back, forcing him to continue sinking downward. Lin Chia did not know how long he had been sinking. Perhaps it was a day, a month, or even a year. Here, time seemed to lose its meaning, and only darkness and chaos remained as the eternal melody. He did not know how long it had been when a voice suddenly appeared in his ear. Who are you? A glimmer of life suddenly returned to Lin Chia's hollow eyes. He blinked and, in a daze, turned toward the direction of the voice, looking into a corner of the endless darkness. There stood a child around 6 or 7 years old, quietly gazing at him with a frown. Is that me? The moment he saw the child's face, Lin Chia was taken aback. The child's appearance was almost identical to his own when he was young, the only difference being that the child's gaze was as unfathomable as the surrounding abyss. The child frowned at him and spoke again. Who are you? I am Lin Chia. Upon hearing this answer, the child's frown deepened. He squinted at Lin Chia for a moment and shook his head. Wrong. What's wrong? You are not me. As the last word fell, a thunderous sound suddenly erupted in Lin Chia's mind, and the surrounding darkness began to churn violently. At that moment, a point of golden light ignited from the darkness above Lin Chia, like a sacred sun, swiftly tearing apart the darkness. A mysterious force suddenly wrapped around Lin Chia's body, pulling his consciousness rapidly upward toward that blazing sun. A puzzled voice came from that blazing sun. The moment Lin Chia heard it, he was momentarily stunned, feeling a sense of familiarity. Before he could discern the identity of that voice, his figure completely merged into the golden light, and endless brightness flooded his vision, overwhelming him with a strong sense of dizziness. Lin Chia's figure suddenly sat up from the lush grass. He opened his eyes wide, the golden hue in his gaze receding like a tide. His voice was heavy, beads of sweat the size of beans hung from the tip of his nose, and he looked as if he had just finished an intense workout, drenched in sweat. As his consciousness gradually returned, Lin Chia's breathing began to calm down. A hand gently patted his back and a warm voice came from beside him. Brother, are you okay? Lin Chia's body jolted. He quickly turned his head to see Yang Jin sitting beside him, his eyes filled with concern. Ah, Jin. Lin Chia remained in place for a long time before regaining his senses. Fragmented memories surged in his mind, connecting all the events together. Did I not die? The celestial sovereign intervened to save your life, and just now the archangel Michael used a miracle to bring you back, Yang Jin said with a smile on his face. Brother, you survived. Wasn't he on the moon? Right, that light from the darkness seemed to be his voice too. What exactly were those things I just saw? A multitude of questions flooded Lin Chia's mind, but he no longer had the energy to ponder them. After being resurrected, his mind was still quite chaotic and he needed some time to adjust his state. Lin Chia pushed himself up with his hands trying to stand, but his legs went weak, nearly causing him to fall. Yang Jin quickly reached out to support him, saying, "The Celestial Sovereign said your vitality has just revived, and your muscles need to readjust. You can't engage in strenuous activity." Yang Jin kicked the small black dog lying on the ground, which rolled over and upon seeing Yang Jin's gaze, immediately transformed into a black-gray dogskin wheelchair. Yang Jin helped Lin Chia into the wheelchair and began to push it slowly away. "Where is the Celestial Sovereign? What about Michael?" "They are in the hall discussing matters, apparently negotiating a deal." "A deal?" Lin Chia suddenly recalled that when he last saw Michael during the Great Calamity of Tsongnan, he mentioned that the reason he passed the mortal realm divine domain to Lin Chia was due to a certain deal made between the Celestial Sovereign of the Great Xia and him 100 years ago. It seems that Michael has always had a good relationship with the gods of Great Xia. A sweet breeze brushed against Lin Chia's cheek, and a few cranes circled above him and Yang Jin. The ethereal energy mingling with the fragrance of the lush green grass filled his nostrils, and his pale face gradually regained color. Yang Jin pushed Lin Chia across the green field, through the spirit stream and over the small bridge. Neither of them spoke, simply enjoying this long-awaited reunion in silence. Lin Chia closed his eyes, basking in the sun, comfortably reclining in the dogskin wheelchair, marveling at the wonders of fate. 4 years ago, Lin Chia would never have imagined that one day he would reunite with Yang Jin in such a manner, in such a place. "Brother." Behind him, Yang Jin gently spoke as he pushed the wheelchair. How have you been these years?" "Not too bad, I suppose." Lin Chia smiled. "Why? Do you want to hear my story?" "I'm a bit curious," Yang Jin replied honestly. "I thought you would be very impressive, but I didn't expect that in just a few short years, you would reach this point. I've indeed been through a lot. If you want to hear it, I can tell you. After all, we have plenty of time now." Lin Chia turned his head to look into Yang Jin's eyes. "But before that, I have a question I want to ask you." Yang Jin gazed at him. "What is it? Are you now Yang Jian, or Yang Jin?" Yang Jin was slightly taken aback. He fell silent for a moment. Just as he was about to say something, Lin Chia shook his head and smiled, turning back. "Forget it, that question isn't important. No matter whether you are Yang Jian or Yang Jin, in my heart, you will always be my brother." Yang Jin stood still for a moment, a slight smile appearing on his lips. He nodded and continued to push the wheelchair forward. "Speaking of which, being able to call the legendary and famous Erlang Shen my brother, I, as the older brother, have certainly gained a great advantage." "Brother, haven't you always liked to take advantage since you were little?" "When have I? Every time Aunt Lu next door set up her stall to sell eggs, you would shamelessly ask for buy one get one free. Clearly a blind person, yet you ran off with the eggs faster than anyone else. That was with outsiders. When have I ever taken advantage of my own family? Don't talk nonsense." He. Before Qingyu and the others could step through the palace doors, they heard a familiar silly laughter coming from deep within the main hall. "Chao Yuan." And Qingyu exchanged glances with the others and quickly made their way inside. Tai Bai Jinxing, holding a whisk, smiled helplessly and followed closely behind them. As they passed through the back door of the main hall, a breathtaking garden space filled with celestial energy unfolded before them. It was a large lake with white flowing clouds drifting overhead. The emerald green lotus leaves seemed endless, gently swaying on the lake's surface with the breeze. A long pavilion of bluish gray stretched across the lake, leading directly to an octagonal pavilion in the center. Standing by the lakeside, they could vaguely see a familiar figure sitting in the center of the octagonal pavilion, surrounded by several maidservants, each holding a fan, seemingly fanning him. "Goodness, I was wondering where Chao the thief had gone. Turns out he's hiding here enjoying the service of fairies?" Bai Li Pang exclaimed in shock. "Something seems off, let's go take a look." Listening to the continuous laughter from afar, and Qingyu frowned slightly, and the group stepped through the long pavilion, quickly arriving at the octagonal pavilion. He. As they reached the front of the octagonal pavilion, and Qingyu finally saw Chao Yuan's condition. He was sitting cross-legged on a snow-white mat, his eyes vacant, grinning foolishly at the distant lake view. Black flames flickered from his skin, but before they could ignite anything around him, they were extinguished by the spiritual wind created by the large green fans held by the maidservants. What happened to Chao Yuan? Shin Qingzhu asked with a frown. Tai Bai Jinxing slowly approached from the corridor behind them. The Queen Mother once said that 4 of the 7 fateful locks within him have been broken. The Black King is desperately trying to break free from his prison, causing this young friend's consciousness to fluctuate between clarity and confusion. Whether he can regain control of his body depends on his willpower. The Black King, Jiang Er murmured, puzzled. What exactly is the Black King? Is it a deity from the Great Xia? He. The Black King indeed comes from the Great Xia, but he is not a deity. To be precise, he is a mortal who failed to break through to the Supreme Realm thousands of years ago. A mortal? Upon hearing this, everyone present was utterly shocked. He. How could a mortal possibly attempt to reach the Supreme God? That's the strangest part, Tai Bai Jinxing said slowly. Generally speaking, the Supreme is a realm above that of gods. Even the strongest mortals find it extremely difficult to become gods, let alone leap directly to the Supreme Realm. Yet he almost succeeded. After failing to reach the Supreme for some unknown reason, this mortal began to lose his sanity, becoming a monster that only knew slaughter, referred to by the world as the Black King. Even after failing to reach the Supreme, his power remains terrifyingly immense. His combat strength far exceeds that of ordinary deities. But since he has not yet become a god, he lacks the laws, so even if the Black King is strong, he cannot truly kill any deity. Back then, when the Black King lost his sanity and slaughtered countless beings, it was the Celestial Sovereign who personally intervened, using the causal technique Fate Prison to seal him. Fate Prison? What is that? Qingyu asked. The techniques of the Celestial Sovereign are beyond my understanding, Tai Bai Jinxing replied with a helpless smile. I've only heard that the Black King was ultimately sealed within a mortal with a special fate. Later, whenever the mortal carrying the Black King died, the Black King would transfer to another mortal with a special fate through the causal technique. Round and round, 1,000 years passed, one mortal after another carried the Black King, passing it down to the present. And these generations of mortals who bore the power of the Black King seem to have been categorized by Unite Watchers as a special forbidden area known as above the gods, below all beings, called Black King Annihilation? After hearing Tai Bai Jinxing's description, everyone fell silent, with only Chao Yuan's silly laughter echoing in the octagonal pavilion. So this is the origin of Black King Annihilation, Shin Qingzhu nodded thoughtfully. But if the Black King is so dangerous, why didn't the Celestial Sovereign eliminate him directly back then instead of sealing him? Qingyu pondered for a moment and asked in confusion. The Celestial Sovereign's thoughts are beyond our comprehension. Since he chose to do this, there must be a special reason behind it. Couldn't the Celestial Sovereign repair those 4 broken fateful locks? Not possible, Tai Bai Jinxing shook his head. The fateful locks were not created by the Celestial Sovereign but were extended by those mortals carrying the Black King who have special fates. They are part of their souls and no external force can affect their destinies. He. And Qingyu looked at the silly laughing Chao Yuan with a complex expression. So, there's really no way at all? I'll speak frankly, Tai Bai Jinxing said seriously. Right now, this young friend has only 2 paths to choose from. Either rely on his willpower to suppress the Black King within him using the remaining 3 fateful locks, or be completely overtaken by the Black King, leading to the final 3 fateful locks breaking, allowing the Black King to re-emerge and be sealed again by the Celestial Sovereign into another mortal. But if that happens, this young friend probably won't survive. Success or failure, life or death, all depends on this young friend's own fortune. Qingyu's brows furrowed tightly. He. Just as the atmosphere grew heavy and oppressive, Bai Li Pangpang, standing behind Chao Yuan, suddenly raised his hand and slapped Chao Yuan on the crown of his head. I say, old Chao, we're discussing serious matters here. Can you be a little quieter? Bai Li Pangpang said, his eyes wide. Just as Qingyu was about to intervene, Chao Yuan's continuous silly laughter suddenly stopped. Qingyu froze in place. The black flames flickering on Chao Yuan seemed to have diminished somewhat, and a hint of clarity appeared in his hollow eyes. His ears twitched slightly as if he were listening to something. He can hear our voices? Shin Qingzhu's eyes lit up with joy as she grabbed Chao Yuan's shoulders and shook him gently. Old Chao, you can't give up. 7 nights is already half a foot in the gates of hell, Yet he can still hold on to his breath. You absolutely cannot die. Do you hear me? A glimmer of light flickered in Chao Yuan's eyes again, and the black flames on him grew even scarcer. The celestial sovereign said that to make him fight the Black King, some external stimulation is needed. That's also the important reason for calling you all to the heavenly court, Tai Bai Jinxing said with a smile as he stroked his beard. It seems this tactic is effective. While everyone was chatting, a figure pushing a wheelchair slowly approached along the corridor. Who says I'm already half a foot in the gates of hell? The moment the sound was heard, everyone present felt a jolt in their hearts and turned to look. When they saw the face clearly, they were first stunned for a moment, then an unprecedented joy appeared on their faces. Qi Yi, you're awake. Yang Jin pushed Lin Qi into the octagonal pavilion. The latter had a smile on his face as he said, "Thanks to the miracle of the seraph I was saved." Lin Qi briefly recounted what had happened to everyone. "Fortunately, this means our team has survived intact." Bai Li Pang chuckled as he patted Chao Yuan's shoulder. "Now it all depends on old Chao. Hey ha 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 ha. This young friend still needs some time to regain consciousness. Just as well Lin Xiaoyou's body hasn't fully recovered yet. Everyone please stay in the heavenly court for a few days. I've already arranged your accommodations," Tai Bai Jinxing said with a smile, lightly waving his feather duster. Lin Qi sat in the wheelchair and cupped his hands toward Tai Bai Jinxing. "Thank you, Star Lord. Brother, I'll leave you here. Make sure to rest well." Yang Jin stood in front of Lin Qi's residence and patted the dogskin wheelchair. "I've left Xiao Heilai here. If anything happens it will notify me immediately." "Don't worry, I understand." Lin Qi smiled at him. After Yang Jin repeatedly reminded him, he finally turned to leave. Watching Yang Jin's figure disappear, Lin Qi patted the armrest of the dogskin wheelchair and said with a smile, let's go inside. I didn't expect that in this lifetime you Xiao Heilai could still carry me around." The dogskin wheelchair turned automatically and slowly rolled into the house. Faintly, Lin Qi could still hear Xiao Heilai's whimpering from behind. The accommodations in the heavenly court looked no different from those in the Yaoqi. Lin Qi took a quick look around and returned to the courtyard. He placed his hands on the wheelchair's armrests, trying to stand up and do some simple rehabilitation exercises. It seemed that the dogskin wheelchair sensed Lin Qi's intention and transformed into two low horizontal bars commonly found in rehabilitation hospitals, helping Lin Qi stabilize his body. Beneath the bars was even a body fat scale to monitor his physical changes. Lin Qi was taken aback and chuckled, "These modern things have really been figured out by you reincarnated gods." Just as Lin Qi was sweating profusely from exercising, a knock sounded from the front of the courtyard. Lin Qi turned to look, a puzzled expression appearing in his eyes. He quickly sat in the dogskin wheelchair and rolled toward the courtyard door. Creak. Lin Qi opened the courtyard door, but it was empty behind it. No one. What was that knocking just now? Lin Qi suspiciously glanced around, closed the courtyard door with a reverse motion, and was about to turn around when he caught a glimpse of a figure out of the corner of his eye. His heart skipped a beat. It was a seraph with 6 wings, towering over 10 meters high. It stood quietly in the courtyard, like a majestic and holy giant, lowering its head and silently gazing down at the mortal sitting in the wheelchair. "Michael. Is it you?" "It is I." Michael glanced at the traces of Lin Qi's recent training in the courtyard. "It seems your body is recovering well." Lin Qi made an effort to calm his startled heart and helplessly looked at him, saying, "That's good. So, since you can directly appear here, why did you knock?" "I heard that it's a custom in Daxia to knock before entering." Lin Qi's mouth twitched slightly. "Thank you for your courtesy." In the silent courtyard, a towering and holy angel faced a mortal sitting in a dogskin wheelchair, and the air fell into silence. "Do we really have to stand here to talk? My neck hurts a bit from looking up at you." Lin Qi rubbed his still recovering neck and pointed toward the house. "If it's convenient, shall we go inside and sit down to chat?" "All right." Michael simply agreed and turned to walk into the house. His towering figure quickly shrank to about 1.8 meters and he stepped inside to sit down. Lin Qi wheeled himself back into the house, brewed a pot of tea with the materials on the table and handed it to Michael. Michael looked down at the floating tea leaves in the cup before him, motionless as if pondering how to use this thing. Lin Qiyi sat opposite Michael, and after a long silence he took the initiative to break the quiet, sincerely saying, "Thank you for saving me." Michael nodded slightly. Lin Qiyi's mouth twitched imperceptibly. "Did you come down from the moon just for me? You think too much." Michael said calmly, "I came down to take care of other matters, including visiting the heavenly court to meet the Daxialing Bao Tianzuan. If it weren't for Yuan Shi Tianzuan telling me, I wouldn't have known you were here and in such a dire state. Saving you was just a matter of convenience." Lin Qiyi thought that Michael's appearance in the heavenly court was purely to save him, but now it seemed he had misjudged. However, it made sense. During the great calamity of Tsongnan, Michael had said that he entrusted the mortal realm divine domain to Lin Qiyi merely as part of a transaction. After all, there was no real relationship between him and Lin Qiyi. It was unlikely that he would travel such a long distance just to save him. Lin Qiyi picked up the teacup and took a gentle sip. "Regardless, you still saved my life. I owe you one. You can repay me." Lin Qiyi nearly spilled the tea in his cup. "What did you say?" "In a few days, once your body has recovered, you may need to come with me," Michael said slowly. "You said it yourself. This is what you owe me, and it's also part of the transaction between me and your Daxia Tianzuan." "What transaction did you make with Yuan Shi Tianzuan?" "I came down from the moon to investigate the true culprit behind the unsealing of the moon 50 years ago. This matter is difficult to accomplish alone. I need the help of the Daxia god." "Why specifically the Daxia god?" Lin Qiyi asked in confusion. "Is it because of your good relationship with Daxia?" "That's only part of the reason." Michael imitated Lin Qiyi's action, took a sip of tea, frowned slightly and silently set down the cup. More importantly, among all the divine kingdoms in the world, only Daxia has absolutely not been tainted by the Cthulhu mythos, making it the safest and most trustworthy. Lin Qiyi lowered his head to look at the cup, lost in thought. When he was on the Pamir Plateau, he had heard the Queen Mother of the West mention that the Nordic god King Odin had already allied himself with the Cthulhu deities. Adding to that the destruction of Takamagara, which had been eroded by the Red Moon, two of the major divine realms that Lin Qiyi knew of were already connected to Cthulhu. From this perspective, it was indeed hard to say whether there were any other divine realms related to Cthulhu. But what was certain was that during this century shrouded in mist, all the gods of the Great Xia had fallen into reincarnation, only fully emerging not long ago. This century-long gap meant that the gods of the Great Xia had almost no chance of being connected to Cthulhu. From Michael's point of view, the Great Xia was indeed the safest partner for cooperation. "So, you hope the gods of the Great Xia will help you find the culprit from 50 years ago?" Lin Qiyi nodded slightly. "What about you? What do you need to offer?" "A single item," Michael slowly replied. "The place where this item is located is quite special. The gods of the Great Xia cannot enter. So you and I, as agreed upon by your heavenly sovereign, will have you come with me to retrieve it and bring it back to the Great Xia." "The gods of the Great Xia cannot enter?" That sounded quite mysterious. "I understand. When do we set off?" "No rush. Wait a couple of days until your injuries have healed before we go." "Can I not go alone?" "You can bring a few trusted companions, but there is one condition." "Condition?" Michael looked into his eyes. "Anyone entering that place must be free of distractions, pure and devout." Lin Qiyi was somewhat puzzled, but after hesitating for a moment he nodded. "All right, I understand." Just as the two were conversing, a figure stepped into the courtyard. Bailey Pang Pang stood at the entrance, reaching out to knock on the door. As if sensing something, he squinted his eyes and looked toward the door, his gaze seemingly penetrating the door and wall, landing on Michael at the table. At the same time, Michael seemed to sense something as well, slightly raising his head to glance outside. The two exchanged glances across the house. Michael's brow furrowed slightly, appearing somewhat confused. Bailey Pang Pang's hand, poised to knock, froze in midair. He pondered silently for a moment, then turned and left without knocking. "What's wrong?" Lin Qiyi asked, puzzled, noticing Michael suddenly look up. "Nothing. I thought I saw someone familiar, but it seems I was mistaken." Michael shook his head slightly. "Knock, knock, knock. Come in." And Qingyu's voice rang out from inside the room. Bailey Pang Pang pushed the door open and walked straight into the courtyard. As soon as he entered, he saw Qingyu, Jiang Er and Shin Qingzhu sitting around the square stone table, and he paused for a moment. Pang pang. Qingyu raised an eyebrow. What brings you here? Oh, I was just wandering around out of boredom. I originally wanted to go to Chia's place, but he had guests, so I came here instead. Bailey Pang Pang scratched his head and said. I can understand Jiang Er being in Qingyu's room, but why are you here, Zhuanggu? Playing the third wheel. Jiang Er's cheeks flushed slightly as she turned her head away. Shin Qingzhu, sitting on the stone bench, said seriously, Qingyu reached out to me. He said he had some discoveries and wanted me to come help. Oh. Bailey Pang Pang sat down at the opposite corner of the square table with interest. What did you discover? Qingyu put down the paper and pen in his hand, adjusted his glasses, and his eyes sparkled with excitement. I think I've calculated the unique frequency of spiritual energy. Bailey Pang Pang was taken aback. What frequency? The unique frequency of spiritual energy, Qingyu explained earnestly. Didn't I mention it before? Spiritual energy is merely a form of divine power processed by the heavenly court, infused with a unique frequency. Although this spiritual energy originates from ordinary divine power, the actual divine power content within spiritual energy is much lower compared to divine power. However, the advantage of spiritual energy is that it can be released like air. When diluted and infused with its unique frequency, spiritual energy can affect all things such as plants, animals, the peach garden of the Yaoqi, and the mythical creatures in legends, all of which have been irrigated by spiritual energy for years, leading to their evolution and mutation. Bailey Pang Pang tilted his head in confusion. Spiritual energy is indeed like that. But what does that have to do with what you said? I've always been curious. Since spiritual energy is a special manifestation of divine power, how exactly is it produced? Not long ago I entered Kunlun Void, but the spiritual energy there was almost entirely transferred from the heavenly court and had no self-generating ability, so it had no research value. It wasn't until I ascended to the heavenly court and reached the source of spiritual energy that carries the essence of the heavenly court that I truly encountered the nature of spiritual energy. Qingyu pointed to his eyes, which shimmered with a gray light, and said, during this time I've been using the unique correct answer to try to analyze spiritual energy itself, conducting experiments and calculations. I feel like I'm very close to cracking the unique frequency of spiritual energy. Soon I will be able to master the method of producing spiritual energy. Once I possess divine power myself, I might be able to convert spiritual energy on a large scale. No, perhaps I can first improve the unique frequency of spiritual energy itself and develop a more special divine power frequency band that suits me better. Watching Qingyu excitedly gesturing, Bailey Pang Pang was left dumbfounded. His mouth involuntarily dropped open and he looked at Qingyu as if he were a monster. Qingyu seemed to realize he was a bit too excited, cleared his throat, sat back down and sighed. It's not just spiritual energy. I'm very curious about many things regarding the gods of the Great Xia. It's a pity that it would be great if I could analyze the essence of the heavenly court up close. Bailey Pang Pang. Shin Qingzhu watched the light in Qingyu's eyes and smiled helplessly. The last time I saw Qingyu this excited was when he was shouting about wanting to dissect Chia. Thinking back, that was quite a while ago. Truly a prodigy, Bailey Pang Pang couldn't help but shake his head. Truly a prodigy, Shin Qingzhu echoed, his gaze sweeping over everyone. The smile on his face gradually faded, replaced by silence. You all are prodigies. Shin Qingzhu glanced down at his bandaged hand, and the light in his eyes quickly dimmed. He smiled self-deprecatingly. As if sensing Shin Qingzhu's change in mood, Bailey Pang Pang turned to look at him for a moment, then slowly stood up from his seat. He reached out and patted Shin Qingzhu's shoulder, grinning as he said, Zhuanggu, come with me to find a restroom? Two figures pushed open the courtyard gate and walked straight out. Shin Qingzhu had one hand in his pocket and the other holding a cigarette in his mouth, just about to light it when his fingers paused in midair. He looked around uncertainly and asked, the heavenly court shouldn't have a smoking ban, right? No ban, don't worry, Bailey Pang Pang said, twitching the corner of his mouth. How do you know? Those alchemists burn incense and blow up their cauldrons every day without issue. What's the big deal about you lighting a cigarette? Bailey Pang Pang waved his hand dismissively. If they really ban smoking, we'll deal with it if we get caught. True. Shin Qingzhu silently lit the cigarette. He took a deep drag and exhaled a long plume of smoke, as if trying to expel the feelings of powerlessness and depression swirling within him. Brother Zhuang. Yeah. What do you think about being a divine agent? What are you talking about? Shin Qingzhu froze in place. Bai Li Pangpang grinned and pointed at the surrounding celestial palaces and temples, saying, Look, it's not like before. The great Xia divine capital has fully returned, and with so many gods around, there must be a few who want to take on disciples or find an agent, right? I think, Brother Zhuang, you have exceptional talent and character. The chances of being chosen as an agent by the great Xia gods are quite high. If the moral celestial venerable, the Jade Emperor, and the Queen Mother all came to you at the same time asking to be their agent, who would you choose? Shin Qingzhu, cigarette in mouth, looked at Bai Li Pangpang suspiciously. Are you joking with me? Just hypothetically, I'm just making an analogy. Shin Qingzhu fell silent for a moment. I wouldn't choose any of them. Why not? Shin Qingzhu stopped walking. I don't want to be anyone's agent, nor do I want to be anyone's shadow. I just want to be myself. Bai Li Pangpang stared at him for a moment, then looked away and nodded. Yeah, I understand. Which direction is the Heavenly Court's restroom? I don't know either. Should we ask a god for directions? Do they really need something like a restroom? After Michael finished talking with Lin Chia, he left on his own. Lin Chia returned to the courtyard to train for a while longer. After working up a sweat, he sat in a dogskin wheelchair and rolled back to the bedside, lying down on his back. From today's rehabilitation progress, it seemed that this body would take about 4 or 5 days to recover to its original level. According to the Celestial Venerable and Michael, their transaction needed to be completed quickly. Lin Chia planned to wait until he fully recovered before heading down to the mortal realm with Michael to retrieve the items from that mysterious place. Staring at the ceiling, Lin Chia slowly closed his eyes and sank his consciousness into the mental hospital of the gods in his mind. As soon as he pushed open the door to the director's office, he heard a mournful and melancholic elegy coming from the stone steps in front of the courtyard. Brown guavas and the green leaves of ivy, I reluctantly extend my rough fingers to shake off your tender yellow leaves. Due to the tragic encounters of friends and family, the heavy burden of pain forces me to disturb your flourishing youth. Young Director Lin has died, perished in the prime of life. Young Director Lin has never left his home. Lin Chia turned his head in confusion and saw countless caregivers in deep green uniforms lined up neatly in the empty courtyard, silently wiping their tears. Li Yifei stood in front of all the caregivers, wearing a white hat and a white sash, his eyes red as if he had just cried a lot. Behind him, several other ministers stood in a row, their expressions equally sorrowful. Among them was Wang Kai, who had participated in the divine battle, his dog leg still bandaged, trembling as he leaned on a cane, using his paw to wipe away the tears at the corners of his eyes. On the stone steps in front of the courtyard, Bragi was holding a harp, facing everyone with a sorrowful expression, plucking the strings again and again, choking back sobs as he sang the elegy. When Bragi's song came to an end, Li Yifei, standing at the front, took a deep breath and shouted with red eyes. Farewell, Director. Swish. Hong Yen pulled out a stack of white paper money from his pocket and suddenly threw it into the sky. The fluttering paper money rained down into the courtyard, and the caregivers' cries grew even more sorrowful. Woo woo woo, Director Lin, may you rest in peace. Director Lin, we will miss you. Director, if you have any unfulfilled wishes, give us a dream and we will fulfill it for you. Director Lin, you died so tragically. The wails echoed throughout the courtyard. Lin Chia, wearing a white coat, stood at the door of the director's office, his mouth twitching uncontrollably. It seemed he sensed something and looked up at the second floor. There, at the door of several patient rooms, a monkey draped in a tattered robe was silently leaning against the railing alongside a man in a gray cloak. Each had several empty wine jars beside them, gazing at the white paper money scattered in the air with complex expressions. Do you believe it? Gilgamesh suddenly spoke. What? This farce below. I don't believe it. Sun Wukong fell silent for a moment and shook his head. He's not that easy to kill. Besides, he is the master here. If he really died, how could there be no changes at all? Is that so? Gilgamesh narrowed his eyes. Do you really think this hospital exists solely because of his life? Sun Wukong frowned. You've been here long enough to see how high the status of this hospital is. Such a level of existence could never depend on a mortal's soul, fading away with his death. Gilgamesh shook his head. Moreover, is he really the master here? What proof is there? What do you mean? I mean nothing. Gilgamesh turned his head, calmly watching the many crying caregivers in the courtyard. I just feel that this place is not that simple. While the two were conversing, Li Yifei in the courtyard shouted again. Bow to the spirit house. Swoosh. The hundreds of caregivers in the courtyard suddenly turned around and deeply bowed towards the building of the hospital, specifically to Lin Chia's director's office. When everyone wiped their tears and stood up in a daze, they saw a familiar white figure standing at the door of the director's office. They blinked in surprise, rubbed their eyes and focused their gaze. Under the dazed stares of the caregivers, Lin Chia pondered for a moment and extended his hand from his pocket. You may rise. A dead silence fell over the courtyard. After several seconds, a caregiver finally reacted, their eyes nearly popping out of their sockets as they shouted in terror. Director Lin has manifested. The entire mental hospital of the gods was instantly thrown into unparalleled chaos. Speak up, what's going on? Lin Chia sat in the dean's office chair, hands in his pockets, looking at Li Yifei and Balaki, who stood with their heads down and spoke helplessly. It's Balaki. Li Yifei's eyes widened as he stepped forward indignantly. When Balaki came back that day, his eyes were all red, running around the hospital like crazy, saying that you died in battle, which scared everyone. Even Monkey and King Gigi were shocked. Later, Balaki explained the whole situation, saying he saw you overexerting yourself, your soul withering away, and that's when we believed it. Listening to Li Yifei's accusations, Balaki's head drooped lower, like a child who had done something wrong. Once Li Yifei finished, he quietly said, But I really saw it. When my soul left your body, you had almost no vitality left. With such severe injuries, you shouldn't have survived. Hearing this, Lin Chia helplessly rubbed his forehead and waved his hand. All right, I get it. This isn't your fault. Li Yifei, go explain it clearly to those nurses. I really didn't manifest, so they need to quickly adjust their mindset and continue with their daily work. Okay. I'll go right now. Li Yifei turned and left the dean's office, closing the door behind him. Immediately, the two inside heard a loud voice from outside. What are you all standing around for? The dean isn't dead. It's not a manifestation. Chia is alive and well. Wipe those tears dry. Burn all those white hats and ribbons, not a single one can be left. The whole hospital needs a thorough cleaning, and this floor, damn it, who threw so much paper money on the ground? Sweep it all up. As chaos erupted outside, Lin Chia turned his attention back to Balaki. Balaki's treatment progress, 86%. Seeing the progress bar above his head, Lin Chia felt a bit weary. If he remembered correctly, the last time he checked it was still at 89%. After all this commotion, his treatment progress had dropped by 3%. Dean Balaki opened his mouth, seemingly wanting to explain something, but Lin Chia stood up and patted his shoulder. It's fine, it's not your fault, don't take it to heart. By the way, how have things been with your wife lately? Pretty good, still the same as before, but I miss her more and more. Balaki scratched his head, speaking a bit shyly. When can I go back to Asgard to see her? It should be soon. Lin Chia vaguely shifted the topic, chatted for a few more minutes, and then let Balaki leave the dean's office. Once Balaki was gone, Lin Chia stepped into the underground prison. This time, Lin Chia remembered clearly that there was a mysterious being locked up in the underground prison. That Weeble Wobble had been tormented by Wang Kai for so long. It was time to see the results. Sure enough, Wang Kai did not disappoint Lin Chia. When he stood at the prison door, he saw that the Weeble Wobble's mysterious fear level had already surpassed 100. If Wang Kai hadn't been summoned out to fight by Lin Chia earlier, it would probably be nearing 200 by now. After a simple round of threats and inducements, Lin Chia successfully hired it as a nurse for the hospital, handing it over to the chaotic magic cube and adding it to the cleaning department. Once Lin Chia finished these tasks and walked out of the dean's office, he noticed two figures standing at the door, seemingly waiting for a long time. Monkey, Gilgamesh. Sun Wukong stood at the door, silent, his eyes fixed on Lin Chia, with two glaring golden lights bursting from his gaze. Under the illumination of this golden light, Lin Chia instinctively squinted, but just a few seconds later, Sun Wukong withdrew his intense gaze. "How is it?" Gilgamesh asked. Sun Wukong nodded slightly. "Not corrupted by any filthy things nor replaced, it's really him." Lin Chia looked blankly at the two in front of him, confused, and asked, "Monkey, what's going on?" "It's nothing, just in case." Sun Wukong shook his head. "Balaki said you died, what happened?" Lin Chia helplessly recounted the whole situation. After listening, Gilgamesh narrowed his eyes slightly. "So it was Michael. That makes sense." Just as Lin Chia was about to say something, he caught a glimpse of Sun Wukong's expression and suddenly froze in place. "Monkey, what's wrong?" Lin Chia asked tentatively. In front of the dean's office, Sun Wukong, draped in half a cassock, stood there like a statue, a rare look of daze appearing in his eyes. Sun Wukong came back to his senses, looking into Lin Chia's eyes. "Did you just say, the heavenly court? The great Xia god has returned?" "Yes, he has." Lin Chia nodded firmly. "The source of the heavenly court has been restored, and all the gods of great Xia have returned. My true body is now in the heavenly court." Returned. Upon hearing Lin Chia's answer, Sun Wukong's gaze became complex. He seemed to lose his soul, standing there for a long time before murmuring to himself and turning away, heading off into the distance alone. Lin Chia watched that lonely and desolate figure, and memories of a helpless silhouette kneeling before the corpses of Zhu Beiji and Sha Wujing, roaring into the mist, resurfaced in his mind. He opened his mouth to say something but hesitated for a moment and ultimately said nothing. Lin Chia walked through the busy courtyard and directly ascended the stairs to the second floor of the hospital. Balaki was downstairs singing a cheerful tune, trying to counter the tragic atmosphere brought by the previous morning's song. Sun Wukong sat alone in a corner drinking from a wine jar, while Gilgamesh seemed to have wandered off somewhere. While the entire hospital was bustling with cleaning, the floor where the 6 patient rooms were located was empty and silent. Lin Chia, wearing a white coat, walked to the door of the 6th patient room. The dim sky rolled behind him and the faint light falling from above cast his shadow on the door. Lin Chia looked up at the doorplate above the patient room, which clearly depicted the shape of a book. However, the font on the book was too small, making it impossible to discern which 2 characters it represented, even from such a close distance. The book. Which deity is related to books? So far, deities from Greek mythology, English mythology, Norse mythology, Great Xia mythology, and Sumerian mythology had all appeared. Thus, it could be inferred that the choices for the deity of the last patient room were limited. Lin Chia shook his head, not thinking too much about it, and directly placed his hand on the doorknob, pressing down firmly. There was no point in overthinking. Once he opened this door, the identity of the last patient would naturally be revealed. As the door to the patient room opened, an endless, pure and warm white light poured out from the crack.